Sorry.
Man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kirsten Corteza, your host for today's program, Pillars of Democracy, A Voter's Choice is a Nation's Voice. To officially start, may I call on Mary Lachine to lead us into prayer.
Let us all be aware that we are in the most holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your amazing power and work in our lives. Thank you for your goodness and for your blessings over us. Thank you that you are able to bring hope through even the toughest of times, strengthening us for your purposes. Lord, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin our activity. As pillars of democracy, help us to engage in a meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. We also pray for all speakers and those who are present today, as well as the lives of those we will encounter afterwards. Continue to remind us that all that we do today, all that we accomplish, is for your greater glory and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Holy Mary, Mother of God,
Pray for us.
Saint Ignatius of Loyola,
Pray for us.
let us love and serve in all things.
For the greater glory of God.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, Article 5, Section 1 states that suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines not otherwise disqualified by law, who are at least 18 years of age and who shall have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year and in the place wherein they propose to vote for at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. No literacy, property, or other substantive requirement shall be imposed on the exercise of suffrage. With that, as Atenean leaders, we are reminded to become concerned citizens of the country, and by that, we need to practice our right to vote. For now, let us call on the project head, Uriel Indino, for a short welcoming remarks.
Pleasant afternoon to all. I welcome today's webinar entitled Pillars of Democracy, A Voter's Choice is a Nation's Voice. The youth plays a vital role in the progression of our country, and many would even say that we are the future. With that in mind, in this webinar, we hope to provide our fellow students who are eligible to vote with the proper knowledge, guidance, and awareness of the many processes that voters go through before and during the election. Also in this event, we aim to provide context of what voting for our democracy truly means for our country and showcase to our students of what it takes to vote with responsibility. As what Abraham Lincoln once said, the ballot is stronger than the bullet. With that said, let us continue to give emphasis towards the importance of voting and keep in mind all the facts that we will be learning today from our esteemed speakers, for they will be deemed essential for our democracy, essential for our future. Once again, I welcome today's webinar, Pillars of Democracy, A Voter's Choice is a Nation's Voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Uriel. Surely this activity is very essential, especially that as youths eligible to vote, we could make a great impact on our nation. Let us not wait any longer, as I feel that everybody is eager for today's talk. So to proceed, let us introduce our first guest speaker for today. An urban planner, a storyteller, and a public servant. Got a diploma in urban and regional planning at the University of the Philippines Visayas, BS Management Communications Technology at Ateneo de Manila University, member of Sangguniang Panlalawigan, Province of Iloilo, and former mayor of the Municipality of Lambuna from 2015 to 2019. We welcome Sir Jason Rivera Gonzales. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Kelsey. Maayong hapon sa inyong tanan, kay Sir Herman, to all the faculty.
Sorry, sir. Sige.
And most of all sa tanan ng mga estudyante. Maayong hapon.
It is our pleasure to have you here with us today. Now that we have formally introduced our speaker, we may now officially start the first talk of this event that is about responsible voting. Sir Jason, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Before we talk about voting and democracy, and what's the relationship between the two, it is very important for us to define what is democracy. And I want you to think about it. What definitions have you encountered in the past? And more importantly, to you today, what does democracy mean? I ask this question because I feel that for many of us, ang pamangkot nga ginapalangga mo bala ang demokrasiya sa Pilipinas, kagwiling ikaw nga idepensahan ini. That for the majority of our people, they actually don't know what it means. Kay democracy is a very big concept, and for most people, it is not tangible. And it is important for us students na to have our own personal definitions based on academic definitions. But we need to understand it in a deeper way by knowing how we experience it in our everyday lives. Now, ang democracy, briefly, is a form of government where people get to choose their leaders. It means majority representation. Pero it is not enough. Because when we talk about democracy, the real thing that we are talking about is actually liberal democracy. And this is an important distinction. Because when we define democracy simply as a form of government where people get to vote who their leaders are, we realize that in the past 20, 30, 40 years, that is not enough. Because we have seen in the past 30, 40, 50 years, the rise of what has been called illiberal democracy. You have places like Hungary, kung diin ang ilang prime minister has been prime minister since 1998 and has only missed a term or two for the past 22, 23 years. Now, kung isipon mo, kinanglan natin balikan what exactly are the pillars of democracy? And that is where I want to start. So what is democracy? And specifically, liberal democracy? There are different frameworks depending on whose book you will base it on. No? May ara sang frameworks that talk about the 3 pillars of democracy. May ara sang 4 pillars of democracy. May ara sang 7 pillars of democracy. But I want to talk about this particular model of the 4 pillars of democracy and the key concepts around it. Because after this, we will understand a little more kung ano ning aton nga ginaistoryahan. So there are 4 pillars that we are talking about here, which is justice, representation, equity and equality, and information and freedom. Now, there are institutions that represent each of these pillars. And sugudan naton ang judiciary. I think we are all familiar with the separation of powers of the government. And here we are talking about the judiciary, the legislative branch of government, and the executive branch. And we will extend it to the others. No? And the relevant question here is, when we talk about democracy, how healthy is our democracy? Because in terms of practice, not all democracies are created equally. Hindi tanan nga mga nasyon sa bilog nga kalibutan who proclaim to have a democratic form of government are equal in terms of practice and application of democratic principles. So here in the Philippines, we start with the first pillar of justice represented by the judiciary, and we ask ourselves this. In the past 5 years, the president has picked 11 out of the current 15 Supreme Court justices. And by the time his term will be over, 13 out of the 15 justices will have been appointees of one person. And for the past 5 years, his appointees have been very, very predictable in terms of aligning themselves and their decisions with his own policy statements. And the decisions of the government. For example, ang martial law. Martial law in Mindanao has extended for almost 2 years, for more than 2 years and a half. And there were no clear grounds for its perpetuation. And yet the Supreme Court approved it and affirmed it na it was a valid declaration of martial law. Ang anti-terror bill is another, no? Ang ginahulat pa naton. Pero the anti-terror bill kabaluman kita nga nakalusot in both houses of Congress. Senator De Lima has been in prison. It's not only the Supreme Court, which is the court of last resort, but the lower courts as well that have aligned themselves with, again, the statements and decisions of the national government. Wala sang mapag-on kag mabakod nga kaso against Senator De Lima, but she still is in prison for almost 5 years now. And I can only imagine if I had a relative or a friend who is in prison until today, despite not having any kind of case against him or her. So this shows us ang quality of our judiciary because this is very important. Free and independent courts and an independent judicial system is one of the key pillars of a democratic society. So the next one is representation. And ang representation naman is here, it is embodied by our elected officials, by, well, in this case, by the legislative branch, ang aton nga mga representatives in both houses of Congress, ang congressmen kag ang senators who are elected at large. Now, when we look at representation, nagasulod man diri ang voting because we are the ones who elect our officials. And our next speaker will touch up on many of these things. But I want to share with you today ano ang sitwasyon sa Pilipinas when it comes to voting numbers, no? This report was shared by a former COMELEC, a recently retired COMELEC commissioner, former COMELEC Commissioner Louis Guia. And I'll share with you just a few salient figures from this short report of his. So ang PSA nga projected population in 2022 is 113 million. We have a voting population of 73 million. Sang 2019, we had in the national and local elections 61,800,000 registered voters. And we had 7 million deactivated registration records. Ang imo nga registration as a voter, it gets deactivated if you do not vote for 2 consecutive elections. And in some cases, kung reported nga death, no, napatay na ikaw. So ang number of reactivated registration records out of 7 million is only 400,000. And ang aton nga 2019 figure net of deactivation is 55 million. Ang total new registrations naton is 2 million. And ang makita mo dire, ang net voters is 57 million. Now, I think what is important in this table are ang aton nga estimated unregistered qualified voters nga nagalabot close to 16 million people. So in the Philippines, amo na kadamo ang wala nagaboto. And I'd like to pay close attention to the 18 years old after 2019 NLE and by 2022 national and local elections. So for those of you who will be 18 when the 2022 elections, or at least when the registration ends, no, there are 4 million of you. And I think it is important, no, for a democratic society to reach maturity, no, for its young, able, and educated voters to actually register. At least ang mga prospective, no? So these are the new registrants, 4 million, less the number of approved applications for new registrations, which is 2 million. And i-add natin ang deactivated na registration records, no? For a total of 9.8 million. Basically, this is also a campaign for all of us nga pwede na nga kwalipikado nga mag-register gid kita kay tama ka importante sang aton nga boto. Now, what is positive and promising, no, is ang balita coming from COMELEC nga starting last February 20, sang nagligad lang nga Sabado nga gin-open na nila ang Saturday nga voter registration. So I'd like to hear, wala pa ko ni kabati so far kung anong experiences ng sang mga botante, sang mga registrants. There is a Saturday registration. How efficient is it? And I'd like to hear maybe from some of you in the future through your teachers kung ano ang inyong experience with this. Now, when we talk about representation and voting, it's also important to talk about, again, how well do our elected officials represent us? When they make decisions like, for example, ang anti-terror bill, do they represent you? Do they speak for you when they approve policies and laws like this? No, the public raged as the House passed the anti-terror bill, which allows a preliminary declaration as a terrorist, surveillance of suspected terrorists up to 90 days, their prolonged detention up to 24 days, and arrests without judicial warrants. And it is important for young people such as yourselves not to be aware of the issues. And here, I think, ang critical na importance of being politicized. Mabatian naton sa damo nga mga pumuluyo, kapinpagid sa mga kabataan ng istorya, bala nga hindi ko yung mag-intra sa politika, hindi ko yung mag-intra sa istoryahanay kay kagamo. No? But when we think that if we want better schools, we need politics. If we want better health systems, we need politics. If we want better hospitals, we need politics. And it doesn't mean that we need to be partisan. Here, politicization means to be informed. To be politicized is to be empowered. So that is the second pillar of democracy, no? And I'll repeat it again. Ang key question for me sa pillar nga ini is, how well do our elected leaders represent you? Do they speak for you? Do they represent your aspirations, your hopes? Now, the third pillar is equity, no? Which is embodied by the bureaucracy together with the executive. So both at the national and local levels. And here, equity is defined as the fair, just, and equitable management of all institutions serving the public directly or by contract. The fair, just, and equitable distribution of public services and implementation of public policy as defined by the National Academy of Public Administration. So when we talk about equity, again, here we are talking about the delivery of basic goods and services. And ang pamangkot ko sa inyo, if you make your own personal assessment, how well is the state, the government, both national and local, serving your interests? Do you feel the delivery of basic services are up to par? Ano, nagapasa ba sila? If you are to give them a grade, a mark, what would it be? And just a few notes on this today, no? The most pressing issue of the day is the COVID pandemic. And this dominates headlines, our day-to-day conversations, and of course, it deeply influences our lives today. And ang pamangkot ko is, if you were to make an assessment of how we are doing on this front, and in a recent study that was conducted throughout Southeast Asia, ang Philippines scored the lowest among all ASEAN countries in terms of government pandemic response. And there is still no set arrival date for much delayed COVID-19 vaccines. And again, it doesn't end here. If we look at the other services and public goods that the government is supposed to deliver to us, how well are they doing on this front? And again, it is important for us to ask these questions. Kaya again, ang democracy is not just about voting. It is so much more than that. And then finally, we're talking about here freedom and information or access to information, which is embodied by the media establishment. Amo gani na normally ginatawag ang media as the fourth estate. Now, ang nakita natin in the past few years is that the national government has been allergic to criticism. Ang mga critical voices have been silenced, both at the individual and institutional levels. Ang Rappler has been one of them for being one of the most vocal. Ang ABS-CBN has been taken off air. And ang pamangkot ko is, how do you feel about these things? And on top of that, when it comes to the media space of which we are a part, social media in particular, how is the environment from your end? Kabaluman kita nga ang algorithms ng mga social media platforms, they are designed to create echo chambers. What that means is that we are fed data and information regarding our current interests, and wala siya commonly nagagwa from those spaces. If I like cars, if I like comics and anime, ang gina-feed sa akon sang Facebook and the other social media platforms, amo na lang na sang amo na, no? So our information bases are actually shrinking. Our conversations are narrowing because of these algorithms. And we need to be aware of this, because part of a robust and mature democracy is having a pluralist society, pluralist communities, and of course, conversations na hindi lang single topic or single issue. Now, on the issue of EDSA, which we celebrated yesterday, EDSA People Power, just before 3 days before the commemoration of EDSA People Power, ang Wikipedia, which is a crowdsourced na information platform and one of the largest sources of information in the world today, was attacked, no, by vandals. So, ang two of the most, in a way, debated on and contentious topics is martial law and ang EDSA, because there are orchestrated nga mga operations in rewriting the entries, and included dira ang mga entries for the Marcos family. Ang point lang dire is that there are people who are hired actually nga to consistently push the envelope in terms of editing the entries to reflect a different reality. And may ara sang mga, these are non-paid people nga dedicated nga mga editors, no? They call themselves Wikipedians who try to ensure ang validity and accuracy of the content that is shown there. So it gives you an idea of the kind of warfare that is happening on digital spaces these days. Put together, these are the 4 pillars of democracy. And we need to understand our own democracy in light of these pillars, and voting is just one of them. So we need to look at each of them and again ask ourselves, how healthy is our democracy today? Back to my earlier topic that I mentioned about illiberal democracies. Now, these are places where people can vote for their leaders, where there is no real democratic choice. For example, Russia. The same party has dominated Russian politics for the past more than 20 years. And kung tanawon mo dito, ang opposition nila is not only crushed, it's decimated, and there is no real alternative to Putin. Do you still call that a democracy when you can vote for your leaders, but there is really just one choice? Kaya ang opposition was never really allowed to flourish. They were crushed at every turn. And there are many other states and countries that have the same situation. Ang Singapore is another example. It claims to be a democracy, but the media is not free. Ang opposition is in the same state as it is in Russia and Hungary. People can vote for their leaders, but really, the leaders that you choose from all belong to just one party and one group. They represent the same ideology. There is no pluralism when it comes to conversations and issues. And I ask again, is that a democracy? And there is a 5th pillar, no, which is the community. And this is also where people like yourselves come in. Here we are talking about civil society. We are talking about people's organizations. We are talking about ourselves. And ang key concept, of course, is participation. Now, put together, I ask again, what is the state of health of Philippine democracy today? And what is your role in creating a new Filipino nation? I will share with you nga there are many friends of mine, my peers, who have expressed an opinion, ang sentiment repeatedly nga they are considering moving abroad. For those who have the means and the opportunity to do it, to look for a different life outside of the Philippines, they will pursue it. And students, no, especially you at your age, it is entirely possible nga we are insulated from many of these things that are happening in the country today. And ang pamangkot ko is, again, what is your role in making things better? So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we're having some difficulties. Talk given by Sir Jason Gonzales, no? From his talk, remember these lines: the laws, the government, do they represent you? Do they speak for you? That as youths, we should be aware of the issues around us. Remember, if we want a better society, we need politics. Politicization means to be informed, and to be politicized is to be empowered. Surely, us Athenians would. A short reminder that you may reserve your questions in mind for the Q&A portion. At this juncture, let us proceed to the second part of this event, which highlights voters' registration. Let us introduce our second speaker for today. Studied at the University of the Philippines, Visayas, major in broadcast communication, with a postgraduate background at the University of San Agustin Bachelor of Laws, former legal researcher at the Su Gutierrez, Lugardo, and Lee Law Offices, city election officer, voters education speaker in the province of Iloilo. We welcome Mrs. Alice Bernadette Pama Naranjo. Good afternoon, Mrs. Alice.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
For now, I will give the spotlight for you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, my fellow Atenean, the people in the Ateneo community. Good afternoon once again. I was also there last year, and here I am once again. So this afternoon, I was tasked to discuss with you the procedure in voting, because I believe that you are the right voting age. Kamugi ang ginahulat namon sa komisyon. No? As Jason earlier said, kamugid ang voting age that we're waiting for, no? Nga maka-help sa amon nga pagpadugang sa mga botante subong, because we are really way below our expected registrants because of the pandemic. So we in the commission have this mission that we are the guardians of the sovereign will of the people, and we commit ourselves to conduct clean, credible, free, honest, orderly, and modernized electoral exercises, and to empower the electorate toward a vibrant Philippine democracy. So we all know that the youth, no, is the future of the Philippines. So there is no such thing as a vote that doesn't matter. Di ka mo magpanumdum nga, isama lang ng boto ka at pabayin na lang da. No, because your single vote really matters. No? So as I start with my discussion with you about the voting process, I would like to say thank you again for inviting me this afternoon. So I shall start with my PowerPoint presentation. By the way, This is in Ilonggo because the commission, the province of Iloilo believes nga daw mas manami because we will be using this all throughout the province of Iloilo. So it will be in Ilonggo, but I will just try to mix no mga Ilonggo man kita ditanan. Okay, let us proceed. So I will start with okay. Pahanumdum, reminders tuhoy sa pagrehistro. Yeah? So these are just reminders for registration. I believe that you are grade 11 and grade 12, so that is more or less the age that we're looking for para ma-augment ang among registration. Next, please. So, they say ang boto nga bagay, it is a sacred right, no? So, ang Pilipinas, isa ka demokratiko na estado, and sovereignty, ang pumuluyo kag otoridad, kag gobyerno naghalin sa ila. So, sovereignty resides on the people. Next. So, before you can vote and exercise your right, you need to register sa Commission on Elections. So, next. Okay. So, ang basis naton for registration is Article 2 of the 1986 Constitution, which says the Philippines is a democratic and republican state, and sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. That only goes to show nga ang aton nga tingog amo ginayang importante, so we can make or break a candidate, as they say. Next. So anong aton nga basihan nga ibang? It is Republic Act 8189. And this act shall be known as the Voters Registration Act of 1996. Also, we have Republic Act 9189, which is known as the Overseas Absentee Voting Act of 2003. Because as you can see, maskin ang mga ara sa abroad, pwede makaboto. Hindi lang kita nga ari diri sa Pilipinas. So usually, new registration, ang mga transfer from other municipalities and cities, and ang reactivation, as Sir Jason mentioned earlier, amo na siyang nagadunggang sa amon nga listahan. No? And ang nagabuhin sa amon nga listahan are those who, kung mapatay sila, no, cancellation due to death, nag-transfer sila sa ibang nga city or municipality, or excluded na sila sa amon listahan. No? And those annulment of voters. Sige. Skip ko lang ang hindi manaton kinahanglan dito. No? So that is the end of my course. So amo ning importante ang next naton nga i-discuss. Mga kwalifikasyon kag disqualifications sang botante. So what are the qualifications and disqualifications of a voter? Interested gid kamo sini, no? So you should be at least 18 years old, no, sa May 9, 2022. Okay, let's discuss this. Right now, you are not yet 18 years old. But on May 9, you will be 18 years old. Pwede ka nakaparehistro? Yes, you can, because the basis is on the day of the election, which is May 9, 2022. So you can go to the office of the COMELEC and bring your live birth, a copy of your birth certificate, and you can go there and you can ask if you can already register. Next. You should be a resident, no, sang Pilipinas within 1 year on the day of the election, kag sa lugar kung sa diin siya gusto magboto. Okay, please take note that if you are from Iloilo City, you are a resident of Iloilo City, you should go to the COMELEC office City COMELEC office of Iloilo City. If you are from Pasig City, you should also go to a resident of Pasig City. You should go to the election officer or the COMELEC office of Pasig City. If you are from Lambunaw, those kung diin ka mo nga banwa or syudad, you should go to that office na ano sa inyo. Next. Okay. Kung hindi siya diskwalipikado, if you are not disqualified in any manner, so pwede ka mo makaparehistro. Kung may qualification, there is also a disqualification. Okay? So, ang sino man nga wala pa nakalabot sa edad, which is 18 years old, sa pagboto o kung pag-estar sa lugar or a resident of that place, apang mangin kwalipikado sa May 9 nga pag pinili ay pwede na makaparehistro. That is what I discussed earlier, no? So even if you're only 17 this year, you can still register as long as on May 9 you will be 18 years old. Next, please. So these are the disqualifications. Sinuman nga may sentensya penal sang korte nga pagaprisuhon sang hindi magnubo. So if you have been convicted of any crime, ang imong penalty is not less than 1 year, kag pwede siya makuha with the plenary pardon. So disqualified ka, no? Okay. Next. Ang sinuman nga ginpanaugan sang desisyon penal, final decision of the court nga naghimo sang krimen na hanungod sa disloyalty sa gobyerno. So ano ining mga crimes, no, involving disloyalty? So like rebellion, insurrection, pagbayular sang lahi, no, mga naka-violate kamo sang about illegal possession of firearms, for example, kag mga krimen batok sa seguridad sa aton pungsod, securities, no, security problems nato, mga crimes involving security and iban pa. Okay, I'm sure wala sa inyo diri sang disqualified na Athenians. So and also ang mga may diferensya sa paminsaron. So take note that those who are declared by the proper authority, no, nga you are not in your proper, na-declare did ka mo, so hindi sila pwede because they do not have the freedom to think for themselves. So ang may diferensya sa paminsaron, nga nadeklarar sa otoridad, apang kung magabalik na ang iya husto nga paminsaron, siya pwede na mangin kwalipikado nga magrehistro. So maybe temporarily do may insanity, hindi kita pwede makaparehistro. Okay. So please take note, ang sinuman nga diskwalipikado magparehistro kung makuha na ang iya diretsyo, magbalik na, no, ang iya, no, pwede na siya makaboto after makaserve siya sang 5 years, no, sa iya nga. Okay, so reserve your questions later. So basically those are the qualifications and disqualifications of the new voters or the new applicants for registration. Okay? Ano ang mga klase ng aplikasyon sa pagparehistro? So we have to know this. But basically, I think you will, most of you, if not all, are new registrants, no? Because of your age. Pagparehistro para sa mga bag-o nga botante, kag naging 18 anyos na ang edad, or mag-18 anyos sa adlaw sang eleksyon. Okay? So this is an example of the form that you will fill up. So this is the application for registration. By the way, you can makalagin ka mo sa www.comelec.gov.ph. You can download the form, no? You can fill that up. But please take note that you should not sign it. You should not pre-sign the form at home. You print it. Ano gid ha, as much as possible, it's long size because there are some people coming to our offices, short size, in the standard format namon, we cannot accept that. So fill up nyo same nga format sa amon, and then you sign it in front of your election officer or our staff in the office. Also the print ninyo dapat sa office gid sang COMELEC. So you can fill up all the other portion there, but please do not sign it because you have to do it in front of the election officer. So this is an example, no, of our form para hindi ka mo maguhan, makita ninyo. That is back to back, 3 copies, by the way, 3 copies, i-print ninyo 3 copies. We encourage this so that you won't spend much time in the office. So at home, you can download it, fill it up. When you come to the office, ready na siya. Hindi na ka mo mag-fill up. That takes time. Next, please. Okay, maybe if some of you have already registered in one municipality or city and you need to transfer, this is another form, no? Transfer from other cities or municipalities. It's just the same, so may check lang ka mo dira. Okay. Okay. Please fill up all the spaces, no? Nga ano ninyo. Okay, there's also a transfer within the city or within the same municipality. Okay, and the form is like this, no? Kamu naman na siya. Okay. Para familiar na kamo when you go to the office. Next, please. So there's also a change of name or correction of entries if may mga salat-salat. Yes, correct. Next. So you can see that on your screen, familiar na kamo sa amon mga forms. Okay, next. Reactivation, that is as Sir Jason mentioned earlier, 2 elections, 2 succeeding elections that you were not able to vote, i-deactivate ka mo namon the commission. So you need to reactivate your registration. So dapat every election, vote ka mo para hindi ka mo ma-deactivate. Yes, next. So these are the forms. Okay. This is important. No? This is a requirement before you can register. What are these? Amo ni siya mga dapat dalon sa pagparehistro. If you have your student ID or library ID, that's okay. Employees ID. Okay, let's go back. Okay, NBI clearance, SSS, GSIS, driver's license. Maybe some of you have already driver's license, PRC license, IDP ID, postal ID, your passports if you have, and okay, wala pa rigorous senior citizen and PWD ID. Next. So you have it photocopied, by the way. Kung may ara na kamo, bring, but if you are about, for the new registrants, I require you to have photocopy your birth certificate. That is proof that indeed 18 years old ka na, or soon to be 18 years old. So please bring a photocopy of your live birth. Your birth certificate. Next. Okay. That's it, the PSA birth certificate. And for those na magpa-change status from single to married, siya, marriage certificate. Okay. Next. Okay. So now, ang next question, where do you go? Where do you go for registration? You go to the office of the election officer sa inyong banwa or syudad, sa inyong municipality or city. Okay, you go there. Next. By the way, we are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And take note, bukas kami, we are open on Saturdays and all holidays. No, please come to the office. Don't wait for the last minute. Kay kabudlay gid, you will have a difficult time if you go on the last minute. So since ano man ka mo, online, schooling, maybe you can come on holidays, Saturdays, 8 o'clock to 5 p.m. No noon break. We are open for you. Okay, next. The last day for registration is we started January 20, 2020, and we will end no, on September 30, 2021. Take note, election is May 9, 2022, but the last day for registration is September 30, 2021. Okay, so don't wait for the last week or last month. Please come, the sooner the better. Next, please. Okay, so magparehistro because you have just turned 18, you transferred residence, you change your name or your civil status, you have incorrect information, or you have been removed from the book of voters or list of voters. Next. Okay, on to my next PowerPoint presentation. Okay, paano magparehistro? So we already know the requirements. You know where to go for registration. You know when. No? So now, paano na kita magparehistro? So how do you do it? Okay. You can download the forms, but you need to come to our offices because we need to take your biometrics for biometric taking. No? So we have this voter registration machine. No? Amo ni siya. If you can see in your screens, that is the voters registration machine. Amo ning ginagamit namon. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, ang isa ka kwalipikadong aplikante, you need to go personally sa office of the election officer. You cannot ask your mom, your dad, Mom, here is my form. You go to the COMELEC office and have me registered. Di pwede. You should go there personally. Okay, para ma-establish no, ang imo residence and that you are one of the same person nga maparehistro. That's why you need to bring your ID, identification. Okay, next. Okay, so we can also check ang status if you have registered prior or wala kagit, so you have to apply for new registration. Okay. So, tagaan ka sang 3/4. That's why I said, if wala pa ka mo naka-download prior, you have to fill up in the office. So, malawig-lawig na siya. It's a long process. That's why it's better if you have it downloaded in your house and then fill it up prior to going to the office of the election officer. Next. Okay. So, after you have filled up the form, your fingerprints and your picture will be taken. That's why that's what we call the biometrics. No, you will sign, no, mapapirma ka mo, have your fingerprints taken and your photo taken. Okay. Okay. Pagkatapos makuha ang inyong biometrics, you will be given an acknowledgement receipt. Please take note, if there are times that they might forget to give you the receipt. Pangayuon yung gitnang receipt, you ask for it. Don't forget, because that is your proof that you were able to undergo the biometrics taking. Okay. Okay, that is how we take your biometrics. Okay. There is an oath. Okay, that's the picture taking. So, pwede ka mo makapakuha sa inyong picture there. So, pagwapa ka mo. Okay, that is the fingerprint scanner. So that, okay. After the fingerprint scanning, you will have to sign no, in our signature pad. So those are the particular step-by-step process in voting, in application for registration. Next, so these are the forms. So this is the front page. Take note that there is also a back page for the, and that is 3 pages. You have to fill that up, all 3 pages. Next. Okay. So fill those encircled ones are medyo importante ha. You have to fill those up. Okay. Take note ha. You filled all those things up para kompleto ang inyong application form. You can download this form in our website. I noticed during our registration that the younger people can fill this up faster than the older ones, no, Carl?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So take note of those areas that you should. Okay. So next. So during the registration, I have to remind you that we are under the mandate sa COMELEC that we should observe the proper health protocol. So what is this? So please take note, next card, that, okay, we have requirements. No face shield, no face mask, no entry. We do not accommodate if you do not have your face shield and face mask, no? So please bring that. Also, we have alcohols before you can enter our offices. We have alcohols ready for you. And please also, reminder, please bring your own ball pens. We do not provide ball pens anymore. Okay? It helps in the spread of the COVID virus. And of course, we should acknowledge that we need to have, dapat may isa ka metro ng social distancing. So in my own office, I only limit 5 people inside my office at a time. So take turns lang. Next. Okay. As I said, you need mag-alcohol. Next. Okay, you need, we require you to fill up the health declaration form. So before you can enter COMELEC offices, you have to fill that up. Okay, next. Okay, no face mask, no face shield, no registration. Next, please. Okay. So that is how it is inside the COMELEC offices. So we will have to ask you to look for a face shield if you do not have one when you come to the office. Okay. So we also have the decontamination. And by the way, we have registration only from Tuesdays to Saturdays. On Mondays, you might come to the COMELEC office. Wala kami, close kami for disinfection and decontamination. So closed kami on Mondays. And for my last, so for this one, I will not discuss this for long, no? Violation. Because I'm sure, most probably, hindi, wala man kamo gina-violate, no? Okay. Okay, those who are mga double multiple registration. Next card. Okay, so, but take note that if you have nagparehistro kamo twice, you will be liable for double and multiple registration, and that is punishable by the commission. So, kung magparehistro ka mo once lang. Okay. Okay. So, I will not discuss that anymore because hindi man ka mo siguro magpag-double registration. Na? Okay. Next. Okay, because ang double registration is a penalty under the Omnibus Election Code. So, if nakaparehistro na ka mo, don't register again. Okay. Those are the penalties. Disqualify ka mo if you run for office because of double registration. So, kung may mga future politicians diri, if you have been if you will practice double registration, pwede ina siya, no? Nga hindi na ka mo makapadalagan liwat sa any position sa government. Next, disqualified ka mo. Yes, Carl. Okay, you cannot vote anymore. Next. So kung gusto mo magboto, dapat magparehistro gid ka mo. So if you want to vote, register, because at the last minute, if you want to vote and then you are not registered, you will not be allowed to vote. Okay, madamo gid nga salamat. Okay, thank you very much. And I end this short talk with you with this. They say that the vote is precious. Precious gid siya. It is the most powerful non-violent tool we have in a democratic process and in this society. And we must use it because it is our only tool. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Mrs. Alice. And that's a wrap for the second talk given. No? Remember, election is on May 9, 2022. And as said, you may choose to print your own registration form, 3 copies in a long size bond paper. But please don't sign it yet. You will need to sign it in front of the election officer, which their office is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Hopefully, the registration process has become clearer for all of us. So surely all of us has still unanswered questions regarding responsible voting or the voting process itself. There is a 20-minute open forum allotted to be able to converse with our speakers. Should you have any questions to ask for clearer understanding, we encourage you to drop your questions down the comment section in the Facebook page and in the Zoom call. So we have here our first question. For Sir Jason, what are the main problems facing democracy today?
It's a leadership that is allergic to its institutions. And I think that's self-explanatory. No? At every turn, the president has voiced out ang iyang displeasure with parties working for human rights. Gin-slash ang budget sa Commission on Human Rights to 1,000 pesos. Of course, that was reversed. No? Pero those are strong signals of his leanings. And I think amo nang isa naton sa mga challenges naton. And part of it is ang weak institutions. What do we mean by that? Mature democracies are defined by strong and inclusive institutions. And in the Philippines, we have little of those. What I mean by that is part of the practice of democracy is not just enforcement of law, but ang strengthening of norms. Damo nga mga democratic practices are not enshrined in law. Pero, for example, ang isa sina is what is called institutional restraint. Ang point lang bala nga we let societal norms guide our actions that are in line with democratic principles. In the US, the rule of law is seen as something that is ang rule of law is something that's respected. In the Philippines, it's seen as a negotiable instrument. What do I mean by that? Ang may access sa bakuna is kung sino ang lapit sa poder. Dakpon ikaw sang pulis, bata ako ni congressman. In the US, madakop ikaw sang ilang officer. It doesn't matter if you're the son or the daughter of the governor of the state. It doesn't matter. Dakpon nga nila. If you try to name drop, it will only worsen your situation. There is a Pilipinas, ang BIR, I'm being frank here, no? It's not just BIR but the different institutions of the government negotiable, no? Ang imo nga ginabayaran depende sa imo nga lagay. Ang imo nga ginahatag hindi equivalent sa ginaresibuhan. Ang makakuha sang lisensya depende sa kung sino ang lapit dito sa regional head, no? So we have weak institutions in the Philippines. And that extends all the way to the national level where institutions can easily be co-opted. What do I mean by that? You have an entire police force in the country, including the armed forces, acting as personal bodyguards of the executive. Na kung nanong iya nga isugo, tumbo sila. EJK case, for example, wala sang isa ka EJK case nga nag-prosper in our courts. And that is evidence of a weak institution, judicial institution. Isipon mo, in the Philippines, there have been more than 20,000 dead in the past 5 years. Ang PNP itself, based on their own data, more than 4,000 ang ilang gina-declare, and many of them are ginahambal nila ang cases nga nanlaban in quotation marks. And it was the Justice Secretary just a few days ago who said nga they have been weak in implementing ang protocols when it comes to drug apprehensions. Nga damo sang ginapatay nga pero kay wala nag-surrender. Stuff like that, no? Nga basically, what is the biggest challenge of democracy in the Philippines? Two things. It is a leader who is allergic to it, and second is weak institutions. In the US, there is pushback. Because our situation in terms of leadership was similar. Sang time ni Donald Trump, ang Pilipinas and ang Amerika isa ka bangka. Pero sa ila, makita nyo, whenever si Donald Trump ma-issue siya sang order that is bordering on the illegal, there is restraint and pushback coming from the armed forces itself. Because sila ang mahambal na this is not in line with our traditions. So, can you imagine ang head of your armed forces basically respectfully addressing the president that, Mr. President, this is not how things are done. In the Philippines, that doesn't happen. And again, that is a sign of weak institutions. And kita nyo dito in my earlier presentation, when we look at the different pillars of a democracy, we have weak courts, we have a pliant Congress, we have basically it's a stamp pad of the president. Kay kung makita ninyo for the past 5 years, can you actually name instances when there has been a pushback from the lower house, from our representatives? Sa Senate, yes, there are a few remaining independent voices in the Senate, and a big part of it is because they are elected at large. Ang congressmen, a big part of their submission to the executive is because of how the system works. Because the president can easily withdraw or withhold ang ilang pondo sa ila distrito. And this has been seen in minority members of the Congress, of the lower house, na ang nakuha nila nga pondo relative to their peers, tama kagamay. Ang imo nga pondo sa imo nga distrito ginahawidan nila kung hindi ka mag-agree with their policy propositions. So that is the problem of democracy in the Philippines. And finally, I will say, a silent majority. Many of us are unhappy with how things are, but are you speaking out? From your generation alone, and this is not to put blame on any single generation, but to put a mirror before ourselves. No, have we spoken out? And I like the saying na speak out when it's hardest, because it's when it's most needed. Maghambal kita kundo kabudlay gid kay amo na ang tiyempo nga kinanglan gid siya. But right now, how many are speaking out? And this is a case of the frog in the frying pan. Ang istorya bala nga kung magpabukal ikaw sang tubig, idagdag mo ang paka matumbo pagwa. Pero ibutang mong paka sa frying pan, pabukalan mo ang tubig na hinay-hinay, mapatay lang siya pero hindi siya magtumbo pagwa. And we are the frog in the frying pan, which has been heating up for the past 5 years.
Thank you, Sir Jason. That is why it is very important to practice our right to vote, no? Especially with what you mentioned, silent majority. So thank you again. And we have here another question for Ma'am Alice. What should I expect to happen during an actual election?
Okay, good question. In an actual election, your first-time voters ka mo, no? So you will be bringing your, that's why I said, please keep that um, uh, acknowledgement receipt. You call that acknowledgement receipt. But however, when you arrive in the voting center, pag-abot nyo gid, there will be a list of voters outside the precinct na tawag naman sila presinto, no? But before that, check ninyo gali what is your voting precinct number, so that when you arrive during the election day, you know where to go. Kay may mga signs man na kung diin ka mo nga presinto makadto, no? So when you arrive, you look for your name outside. It's listed for those for that particular precinct. Because if you are registered here in the city, medyo mabulubudlay because there are so many voters in one voting center. So when you arrive and you see your name, you present, you go inside, no? Nagapila kamo sina because there will be a lot of people queuing. And then pag sunod ninyo, that's the voting process na ha, because I thought we're just going to discuss the registration. That will be the voting process na you show your names will be checked by the Board of Election Inspectors. Then after that, you will sit down and you will get ang inyo na nga ballot. But if it's going to be a national election, it will be shading. Actually, it will take some time, no, kung isa-isahon din nato ng voting process. But that is shading. I can discuss that at another time ang procedure in voting din, no? Medyo malawig-lawig siya. Pero shading kita ko national election. Kung barangay election, it be writing down the name of the candidate you want to vote for. And then you will insert that in machine, no? Ang vote counting machine, our VCM. Maybe we can discuss that at a longer time next time, no? Kaya medyo malawig-lawig siya. But that is how you're going to do it. Just keep your receipt so that on the election day, mas mahapusan ka mo. Next time na lang, it's going to be a very long discussion.
Thank you, Ma'am Alice. I believe it's the same process during SK elections, right? So
yes, more or less. It's
yes.
the same thing.
Thank you. And we have here another question dedicated for Sir Jason again. What can you tell us so that our generation would still believe in the value and power of voting?
Si Senator Bam Aquino lost by less than 400,000 votes. No, that's less than half a province. And that's 10% of the young people who didn't vote, who didn't register in the last elections. Si Senator Bam Aquino has been the second most, if not the first, the most active senator in the last term, no? From 2013 to 2019. He passed the most number of bills that are game changers, including ang free college in state universities in the Philippines. He did the most work in terms of, again, significant bills that were signed into Republic Acts. And yet he lost. Now, you compare him to the underperformers that are in the Senate right now. Now, ang point ko lang is that's where you realize na a single vote matters. Kay he lost by a margin of around 300,000 votes. And that's not a lot, no? Si VP Lenny won by a margin of a little over 300,000 votes. Now, can you imagine if 300,000, even just 150,000 people, half of that didn't vote for her and voted for the second leading candidate? Then, can you imagine the leadership that we would have for president and vice president today if there was no balancer in the personality of Leni Robredo? Now, in the US, ang ilang nga electoral system is quite different than ours. No? Electoral college ang ilang nga ginagamit. And in the last, in the other elections, no, in 2016 in the US, si Donald Trump won by a significant margin in terms of electoral votes. But there was one study ngagintun-an nila nga pila kas kaboto ang kinanglan in order to swing it if you go by state. And si Donald Trump, si Hillary won more than 2 million votes sa popular voting, no? If you count all the number of votes in the US, si Hillary Clinton won by more than 2 million votes, and yet she lost the entire election. Now, si Donald Trump, nagdaog siya by just a little over 35 or 40,000 votes in the US. What that means is that if you give Hillary Clinton 40,000 votes more and you distribute it strategically in the battleground states, Hillary would have been president. And that is shocking. Because si Donald Trump has set back global democracy by years, if not decades. Ang goodwill and relationships that the US has built through the decades, no? He turned it back. And ang impact niya on all of us, tama kadako. And by extension, ang impact man of a Biden presidency on global democracy will be profound. So, again, it shows you the value of a single vote. Si Donald Trump won by less than 40,000 votes if distributed strategically in the battleground states. And in the Philippines, one of our best senators lost by 300,000 votes. Ang Iloilo City, ambot Ma'am Alice, pila ka botante ang may-ara kita subong sa syudad sang Iloilo?
Sa syudad sang Iloilo, it's 200, almost 300,000 as of last election registration board hearing.
Can you imagine ang size of Iloilo? Although Senator Bam won a lot of votes in the city, no? Pero isipon mo lang a city as small as Iloilo, ang iyang voting population could have turned the tide for someone like him. That is the value of a single vote. And I want to share with you my own experience. The first time I voted was in 2001. I was still in college when I voted and nag-volunteer ako for NAMFREL back then, Bantay Boto. And it was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. Ang magbantay sa balota sa gabi sa Quezon City. This was in Quezon City. And ang magpila para magboto together with my friends. No, it was exciting. It was thrilling to be a part of this continuing democratic project. No, democracy is a project. And in some cases, it's been a failed experiment in places like, again, Russia, Hungary, and Turkey. No, in the Philippines, it's hanging by a thread. In the Philippines, it's drowning. No, it's neck deep. Pero hindi pa lunod. And I just want to share with you, I get the sense every time I talk to young people, and I repeat this over and over again, that young people such as yourselves, na ang feeling ko na many of you do not have any idea just how much you are needed. And I want to tell you that you are needed.
Thank you, Sir Jason. No? Let us all remember that we are all needed. No, our vote is needed. So we have here another question. This is directed to both our speakers. Anyone could just answer. How will we know if a leader we elect or vote is worthy to secure a seat in the government?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How will we know if a leader we elect or vote is worthy to secure a seat in the government?
In the government, ako two things. Look at their track record, whether they're in the private or public sectors. And ang when I say track record, their track record of advocacies. Tanawin ninyo kung anong ilang maging panindugan sang una, if at all may ara sila sang pinanindugan. Kung may mga kausad silang ipakigbato, or nagasulod lang bala ini sa politika para sa poder, para sa kwarta, para sa popularidad. Because I'll share with you nga in my own experience na among my peers, no, kadamo gid sang gasulod sa politika because it's fancy, because they like it feeds their ego. Kasadya bala nga ginatawag ka nga mayor, kasadya nga ginatawag ka nga congressman, nga may poder ikaw, nga ginasuluduhan ka sang tawo, ginatawag ka nga honorable, no? And so many join for those reasons. And another thing that you can look at is lifestyle. Tanawon ninyo ang lifestyle sang tao nga nagapapili. And today, because of Facebook, especially if they have public accounts, although mind you that these are carefully curated accounts, no? So we see what they want us to see. But there are also some accounts, no, private accounts nga publicly viewable, nga hindi man ya amo naka-curated yang intended for a public run or a run for public office. And tanawon ninyo, watch their Instagram accounts, look at their Twitter accounts kasi kay amo na susubong, no? These are the most powerful ways of looking at the track records of those who mean to lead us, of those who mean to speak on our behalf. Tanawon naton, tuod man ba lang iyang ginapaghambal? Has there been consistency sa iyang ginpanghambal kag sang iyang ginpangobra? And I think this is the best thing that we can do. And this was not available 15 years ago. Today it is. And I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am Alice, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would like to add something about that. I have been with the Commission on Elections for 25 years, and I have encountered a lot of politicians, those who were able to win and lose. And ang maano ko lang siguro is don't be misled. Don't be misled with some politicians who are so Sir Jason helped me with the word, pero kaanugin pala sa ila, very accommodating, they are so kanami sa ila nga aura, but you know what, sometimes you end up being misled of what they really are with their personal lives and ano. So be very careful for the young people, no? Kay ako I can really vouch that there have been other candidates. I have met a lot of candidates who are just simple, and ang ila track record are so exceptional, pero they do not have this certain image nga daw kanami, so they don't get voted. So please, for the young people, be very vigilant in checking backgrounds and I agree, Sir Jason, backgrounds and track record. I think that's the most important thing. Okay, don't be misled with pretty faces, okay, good looks, because sometimes hindi na siya guarantee, no, that particular candidate will be effective, and we will be able to serve to the best of their abilities. So be very vigilant.
Ang nadumduman ko sa inyo nga istorya, Ma'am Alice, ang manggabala nga ang iya nga panit, ano, pino-pino, nami-nami, walang itom-itom, pero kalboro gali sa sulod.
Yes. Ako, I do not want to mention the particular family names in the province of Iloilo, no? Pero there are some candidates who have always been consistent in their service, very good governance in the province of Iloilo, city and province of Iloilo. So hindi ako pwede ka kampanya with the commission. So take note of these family names nga do ever since have been very consistent in their service.
Thank you, speakers, no? Athenians, remember to do a thorough background check to those who are running for the upcoming elections. So we have here another question that this is for both speakers. What can be done to avoid trapos from returning to position again and again?
That will take generations, no? Mauna na lang ako masabat. That will take generations until hindi naton, ginhambal ini sang sociologist and teacher nga si Randy David nga our country is the way it is because of its leaders, and its leaders are the way they are because of our voters. So circular ang logic, no? Do chicken and egg. So another way of saying it is our our leaders are like this because of our political systems and electoral systems. And our electoral systems are the way they are because of the leaders themselves. So sinong mauna? Ano ang mabago? Ang sistema or ang politiko? When I say sistema, ang voting habits of our people as well. And I think it has to be both. It has to change at the same time. It has to change where it can change. So in the little spaces where change can happen, it has to begin there. Kaya hindi, budlay-budlay siya i-orchestrate. Kaya hambal ganin ni Ma'am Alice kay ina, amo na damo mga politiko nga ang perception grabe. Ang appearance grabe, ang ilang mga ginabuyan ng tinaga grabe. And they get voted into office and they are very capable candidates who cannot communicate well in spite of having the track record and the capacity, and hindi sila mabotohan. Until our voters are discerning, hindi matabo siya. We will not get better systems. But we won't get better leaders at the same time kung hindi man mag-improve ang aton nga mga botante. And I think it begins with your generation. And there agad siya nagasugod. Now, when we talk about trapo, may nuance na siya. No? I'll share with you something personal. I've run for public office 4 times. Twice as city councilor, once as municipal mayor, and today as provincial board member. And wala ko kaagi nga namakal boto. Hambal ko, kung mamakalma lang ko boto, hindi na ako magdalagan. Kaya that's paid consent. No? Now, I used to judge candidates who would buy votes wholesale. Ang ako na judgment of them, kataas gid. And I was able to talk to a good friend of mine who has been a friend of mine before we got into politics. And it's a her, no, it's a she. She's a mayor right now in a municipality. And nagastorya lang siya sa akon, and I was shocked, no, kasi she's very good, she's very well educated. And nakastorya lang siya nga gabakal siya boto. Tapos nagaporsyento siya 5%. And as percentages go, puwerte na kagamay. I'm not excusing the practice. In my years in public office, I've never taken a bribe. I've never taken a cut. And I'm proud of that. I say that not to brag. I say that to tell you that it is possible. Pero it is difficult. Tama siya kabudlay. Kay circular na siya mo. It's a painful and destructive cycle. Ang pamakal boto, mangawat. Pangmamakal boto, mangawat. Kaya if you spend 20 million for a municipality, no, na madalagan ka mayor, mangawat ka kay kinanglan mo mag-prepare for the next election. Kay gapamakal ka boto. So it's circular. It's vicious. Now, ining friend ko nga ini, mayor, ang 5% nga ginakuha niya from projects, wala niya na ginagastos for herself or her family. Ginatipon niya na, amo nang ginapanghatag niya, kaginang pamakal niya boto during elections. And ang iya nga ginapamakal boto is a fraction of what her opponent is capable of. Kaya ang kontra niya gapamakal boto is 1,000 per voter. Ang iya nga pamakal is only 200 pesos, kaya mula nang masarangan sang 5% nga kickback ya. Now, after having that conversation with her and many others, no, I will never take a bribe in my life and I will never buy votes, but I am less judging of those who do. Again, I am not excusing the practice. Wala ko ginahambal na it's okay. Pero when we talk about traditional politics, what defines traditional politics is one thing. Kaya damo definitions ang traditional, magkatrapo what exactly do we mean. Pero in essence, traditional politics is transactional politics. Meaning some transactional politics, I give you one thing, you give me one back. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. No, it's an exchange. And vote buying is one feature of traditional politics. So normally maghambal ka nga isa ka tawo trapo, ang pinaka-basic na understanding, expression of being a traditional politician is you buy votes. You give money in exchange for votes. Now, how do we make them not win? Or how do we boot them out of office? Again, it will take generations to get there. When I first ran as city councilor, I saw the vote buying that was happening. No? And after my win, I set up a meeting with one of the more militant and active and vocal parish priests in the city. So nagpasugot siya nga mag-meet kami. And then I went to his church and then nagstoryahanay kami and ang opening ko was about vote buying. Ang vote buying is the cancer of local politics. No, amo lang nakasimple. Vote buying is the cancer of local politics. And it's more prevalent at the local level than it is for the national level. Now, when I opened up with that topic, nahambal ko, Father, panutan ni mabatuan, how do we create new norms in the city na hindi magbaligya sang boto ang pumuluyo? I cannot convince politicians not to buy votes. But I'll try to convince people not to sell their votes. And I was enlisting the help of a parish priest. And then, hambal niya sa ako, naglungo-lungo ulo yung hambal niya, Jason, hindi ta na masarangan. Dugay na nga practice, hindi mo na mabago. Suffice to say, I left that meeting very much disappointed. And then, tapos, end of conversation. And kasadya kay in that same election, ang akon nga balay, ang timbang ko sa balay, houseboy ko, hindi ko man siya mahambalan, nga hindi siya magbaligya sang boto. Although I tell him, but I couldn't convince him. So ginpamangkot ko siya, Lay, si Leo ngalan niya, Leo, ano natabo sang eleksyon? Gin-joke ko lang siya, no? Hambal ko, kay sino ka nagbaton? Hambal niya, syempre sir, sa 3. Hambal ko, sino ginboto mo? Kay 3 ang ginbatunan niya sang kwarta, titig 500 each. May 1.5 siya sang eleksyon. Hambal ko, sino ginboto mo? Syempre, ang konsensya ko, sir. Utoy-utoy kadlaw niya. Now again, I share this story to make you aware of a painful reality that is happening all over the country. Now, when we talk about not electing trapos into office, we have to be aware of that reality. Nga in large parts of the country, in most areas, ang vote buying and vote selling are the norm. And again, it's hard to convince people because they are poor. Ang 500 pesos, 1,000 pesos on election day, especially if received from multiple candidates, it's a lot of money. Di para sa ilaya, mapakaon pa ning ako niya nga pamilya sang isa, 2 ka semana. Di, how do you argue with that? No, it's difficult. Pero again, mahambal man ako gyapon, we make changes in our spaces of influence. In your own little area, in your own circle, you make those changes. And the first part is to be informed. Kung mamangkot ako sa inyo, how many of you read the paper? And here I'm talking about the digital papers, no? Kay wala na gid man subong may gabasa newspaper nga physical. We even ang deliveries ang physical paper nagnubo na gid ang revenues nila in some part nagahalin naman from their digital platforms. But how many among us deliberately and purposefully read the newspapers every day? Hindi yang nakita mo lang headline kay gin-share sang imo amigo sa Facebook. That doesn't count. What I'm talking about is ang deliberate nga habit nga adlaw-adlaw you make sure that you are informed. Anong kakatabo sa Pilipinas? Nga kung mag-istoryahanay kita, maintindihan, balaan mo kung anong ginaistoryahan. No? And I think that's the first step. And until we can convince young people like you nga to pick up that habit, then it's difficult to move forward. Okay, we need to be empowered, and the first step is information.
Okay, can I add a little? Sir Jason, I was cringing with your term vote buying and vote selling, no? Because we in the commission, balaan man sa tanan nga that is violative of our laws. Pero true, we cannot stop vote buying and vote selling for the reason that both are liable, the buyer and the seller. No? Please take note of that. No, okay. Liable ang buyer, liable ang seller. So now it's time for us to investigate a particular situation nga ano na. Sino ang mahambal na yes, ginbakal ako. Okay? So we'll admit that and we will say yes, ginagbakal ako boto. So we end up during investigation wala kami may ma-convict with a vote buying thing. So in addition, amo lang niyang maano ko is that how can we stop these trapos, no? Trapos, traditional politicians. Data-wise, take note that 25 to 30% of our voting population is the 18 to 30 years old, the youth. Okay, So with the 25 to 30%, you can really make a big difference. So kung ara ang pagka-idealism ninyo, ang pagka-idealistic ninyo, all your mga init ninyo ng mga gusto for change and ano, you know what, you can make a really big difference. The youth with a 25 to 30%. Hindi pa kamo corrupted, hindi pa kamo time will come. When I graduated from UP, I was so idealistic. Gusto ko amuna. When I was in the actual world, it was so different. But then siguro ang I spent more than 8 years of my life in UP since high school. By the way, Jason, I'm the best friend of your manang Arleta, manang tata. So we have been, I mean, the 8 years in UP was really doon nag-anugid sa akon nga system. Now, even if I cannot really make the change, I can make a little change in the so with my 25 years in the commission, I'm sure I have imparted a little siguro.
Manuhon ko si Manang Tata pod ko pagisubong.
Ginambalan ko na siya. Yes. So that's it.
Thank you, speakers. Now, our vote is not just worth thousands of money in that folder. Sige, we have our last question. How can be democracy maintained? How can be democracy maintained?
Ang setback to democracy in the Philippines for the past 5 years has been immense. And if our new president in 2022 will not be of the same mold, he or she will have a very difficult time. Ang imo nga balawion, tama kadako. Ang kinanglan mo bawion from for the past 5 years, medyo dako. I have a brother who is in the PNP, no? He is a police colonel. And he was part of the team that tried to institutionalize what is called the balanced scorecard, which is a tool that came from Harvard University. Now, a big part of that effort was really institutionalizing accountability and better systems and mechanisms within the Philippine National Police. Now, ang iyang
I think Sir Jason is having connectivity issues right now.
Wala na gani investigation. Now, can you imagine the effect of that on a whole generation of policemen? Daw ginhambal ko na sa inyo nga what if for the next 2 years sa Ateneo de Iloilo, ang tanan nga mga teachers, they will turn a blind eye to cheating in the classroom during exams. So hipus-hipusan lang na, no? Between teachers and pupils, aton lang ni hipusan ta lang ini. Ang mga teacher, hindi ka mo pagdakpon, hindi ka mo pag-i-report, hipusan ta lang. Now, an entire generation of students in Ateneo de Iloilo na anad sa kopyahanay. Now, you return to the original setup where cheating is not allowed, and it's gonna be very hard because again, you have an entire generation that was used to it for the past 2 years. Now, it's the same in government today. And I see this, and I speak from experience, coming from first-hand accounts of people I know who work at the national and local levels sa gobyerno naton, and so many of them right now are in government just to maximize the money that they can get from national and local coffers. Ang buot silingon, na samtang ari kita de, anong aton pwede himuon nga makapangwarta kita? No? So, the example that I gave about the Philippine National Police is just one among many, many institutions in the government that have been compromised. Amo gani na, among those who know, ang isa ka proposal is, when the time comes, should we abolish the PNP? Kaya naanad sila eh. When I say naanad sila, ang culture of killing. Kung nakita ninyo atong video of the policeman who shot the mother and the son, I watched it, no? And hindi ako dali masyak. And dito ang akon nga kasudlan, no? I turned cold from watching the video of that policeman with his child, no? A young girl. Tupad niya, tapos gintiro niya sa tubang sang bata iya ang isa ka nanay nga tigulang and the teenage son. In cold blood. And that is an expression of what is happening to our Philippine National Police today. Kung sa baga nakatilaw sila dugo, tapos ginsuportahan sila, because it's true that the salaries of our policemen and our armed forces have nearly doubled for the past 3 to 4 years. But mind you, that was a plan that was hatched from the previous administration and the implementation was fast-tracked. No? Pero the point that I'm making is that they have been used to a system that was put in place in the past 5 years. And how do you correct that? No, so if you ask me, how do we sustain democracy in the Philippines? What kind of democracy are we talking about? If there are talks of abolishing the PNP, when the time comes and coming up with something new so that we can start fresh from a rampage that killed maybe close to 30,000 people as of today. And yet, are people talking about it? No. Because they have normalized it. May mga istorya balanan ni Sir Herman kag ni Ma'am Alice nga sang una I speak of the Visconde massacre, no. And even earlier when murders like that happen, it's the subject of headlines for the next 2-3 months. Ginaistoryahan na sa Banga, sa mga panimalay. Today 30,000 are dead and people are not even talking about it. Because that's how dictatorships work. Ginapanas nila ang konsensya sang pumuluyo by normalizing situations which are normally shocking to the rest of us. And when you normalize something like that, something dies in the Filipino. So when we talk about democracy, we're not just talking about legal systems. We're talking about norms. We're talking about non-physical institutions. So ano ang sitwasyon subong sa Pilipinas? Which is why you either turn a blind eye to it or there is value in exploring a life abroad, which is what is happening to many of my peers today. One last story along these lines. I have a friend who's been working for legal NGOs for the past decade. Right now, he's with Lente, but he's worked with other legal NGOs. No? Amo nang iya nga kausa. I want to help others through my legal profession. Pero hambal niya, if more of the same leadership is elected in 2022, pardon the word, pero hambal niya, putang ina pare, titigil ko to. Magpapayaman na lang ako. Hambal niya, if more of the same leaders are elected in 2022, I will resign and then I will work to get rich na lang. No? It's tantamount to giving up on our country. And the thing is, it's hard to give up on something that you've never fought for before. And ang pamangkot kong gani sa inyo is, here is my sentiment about your generation. And this is not a judgment. No? Your generation is the most connected. You have the potential to be the most informed. And yet, I get the feeling that you are the hardest to reach. You are the most connected online and connected to each other. Wala ka mo gabulag sa inyong cellphones. Wala ka mo gabulag sa inyong mga social media accounts. And yet you are the hardest to reach. Why? Because of the varieties of attention getters in your lives. Isipan ninyo, what are the things that you do in your spare time? What are your passions and interests? What are the things that you do for pleasure and for entertainment? Ang gaagaw sang inyong atensyon damo-damo, and that is the challenge of your generation. Damo-damo sang sources of information, entertainment, fun, pleasure, that it's hard to reach you. And I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge even for my generation, how to reach out to you and for you to reach out to each other. Kay it's so easy to stay in our own little circles. Kung ang hilig ko sa kabuhi, K-pop, K-drama, ang hilig ko is, let's say, cars, anime, whatever your interests are. It's easy to stay within those communities and there is no judgment in that. No, it's easy. And basically, not to mind the rest of the world, to pretend that all is okay. So, and I have no answers. I do not know. I cannot pretend to know your generation. And I think activities like this are a very good thing. And I can only hope that conversations like this do make a dent. So, pagpasalamat ko liwat, Sir Herman, and the rest of your team, no, for staging this, to your student council, to Charity and Kelsey, and to everyone else, and for Ma'am Alice, no, for being here as well. Amo na nga ako, when given the opportunity to talk to young people, I always do it. I always give it time. Okay, you are, and I want to end with this story. And I think when I was last in Ateneo, I shared this as well. And I love sharing it. Sang World War II, ang America was dragged into the war because Pearl Harbor was bombed. So ang Amerika nagapahimuyong while the rest of the world went to war. Nagagera ang Europa, nagagera sa Asia, Japan, the Philippines were all involved. But America was nowhere in sight. Galing, Japan made the big mistake of bombing Pearl Harbor. And it woke up the giant. And almost overnight, the US declared war on Russia and Japan. On Germany, I'm sorry, and Japan. And when that happened, they conscripted people. They basically, opened the draft, no, for people to join. And 2 million Americans, 18 and up, 19 and up, some of them as young as you are, a little older than you are, joined the war to defend their way of life in the US. Nag-sign up sila not knowing if they would come home. And I asked myself the same question. If the Philippines went to war with China, for example, if that should ever happen, I ask myself, if I was a young man, would I sign up? Would I go to war for my country? And I don't know the answer. And out of the 2 million that left American shores to fight abroad for this concept of country, 500,000 didn't make it home. Never saw their loved ones again, never saw their parents and their wives and children. But the 1.5 million that came home alive, they had the audacity to call themselves as the greatest generation. Because they were the generation that fought for their country and came home to talk about it. And that whole generation went to college on the strength of the GI Bill that sent war veterans to college for free. And the modern American nation, for good and for ill, but it was built on the backs of those war veterans, young people like yourselves, because the majority of them went to college. And I ask myself, have I seen the greatest generation of this country? Was it the generation of Bonifacio and Rizal? Was it the generation of Ninoy Aquino, Jovito Salonga, Tanyada, Jokno? I don't think so. Ang feeling ko is I haven't seen it yet. And ang ako nga question is, what if your generation can be the greatest generation that this country has ever seen? The one that dreamt for its country, the one that worked the hardest, the one that studied the hardest, the one that offered its talent and its time for a cause larger than self or family. Because believe me, no, you are each called to a cause bigger than self and family.
Thank you, Sir Jason. Would you like to add something, Ma'am Alice?
Yes, yesterday we celebrated EDSA Revolution. It happened in 1986. Of course, most of you were not born yet. Kita lang siguro, Sir H, no? Jason, were you born that time? And I was 18 years old that time. No? Your age. Idealistic and all the, you want change, I was there. Oh, I was also there. So after 35 years, here we are. I don't know which part we are in right now. Timely, no? We had this talk after 35 years, a day after the EDSA Revolution anniversary. So what you can say is the question was, how can we maintain democracy? Democracy, if done right, would really lead us into something great. Success, economically and otherwise. But if it is practiced the wrong way, democracy can lead us to destruction. Um, that is what I want to leave in your pretty and intelligent minds right now. I'm with the government. I can't really talk much about mga idealistic tendencies ko, no? So I'm constrained. But I'm challenging you, all of you, to choose wisely. But before you do that, register. Come to the COMELEC offices so you can vote. You don't say, I only have one vote, it doesn't matter. No, every single vote counts. No, it will count. So that is how we can help democracy come back to our nation. So thank you so much to the senior high school students, to the student council, and to my Ateneo community, all the Ateneans. Thank you so much. Sir H, thank you. Sir Jason, hi to Manangkata. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, speakers. Sir Primo here said, the young people are really our hope. The adults cannot do anything now to stop vote buying. But if all young voters will start not engaging from vote buying acts, they will change the political landscape of this country. So thank you, everyone. At this juncture, let us hear the closing remarks from our very own school principal, Dr. Herman Lago.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good afternoon, dearest Ateneans. I'm very happy that we cap our week-long EDSA celebration with a Voters Empowerment Talk, organized by our dear students themselves. I am happier that we have Honorable Jason Gonzales, a true blue Atenean himself, and Mrs. Alice Naranjo, a true blue Atenean parent herself, who put into flesh what we truly hope to reach in this conversation. Salute to our resource speakers for their generosity of time, expertise, and valuable insights. Thumbs up also to our organizers, Uriel, Kelsey, Charity, and all the other students, together with the men and women of the Student Development Office, led by Sir Jeff and his boss, Sir Pimo. Sir Jason asked us, what does democracy mean to you? So I hope after this, you can research and ask yourself also about this, and maybe put that in your journal. What does democracy mean to you? He hopes that our own definition of democracy goes beyond conceptual definition, and that we must see to it in the lens of liberal democracy. It is not just about voting for our public servants. Remember, we should understand and live out the concept of democracy in a deeper and serious and pervasive way. Sana andyan yan sa atin when we are at our homes, when we are in the classroom, or we are just alone. No? The spirit of democracy. Using the framework of the 4 pillars of democracy, Sir Jason stressed to us the disconnect between what is done in the government today and what is supposed to be done. It is clear as daylight that most of the laws, statements, orders, acts, and even judicial edicts that we have seen and experienced are opposed to what is martial law, the scepter of violence, of corruption, of crapo or traditional politics, of suppression of human rights, etc., is still hovering around us. And your participation in this democratic space that we have is vital. All the more that we need to register, all the more that you need to be more active in this socio-political conversation, all the more that your point of view needs to be counted and heard. Emphatically, Sir Jason challenged us to be more politicized. He challenged us to be more politicized, meaning to be more informed, to be more involved, to start from where we are, in our classroom and our homes, and what we do in our small communities, to be more socially and politically aware, to be more empowered, to respond to the call of the times, to go beyond traditional politics, and to deliver our civic duty as Filipinos and as Christians. And to, he said, speak out when it is hardest, when it is most needed. Meanwhile, on a practical note, Ma'am Narano has explained to us the way to register. So we hope someday, Ma'am Alice, we can bring you here or your people here, or maybe look for ways in order for us to make sure that our students who are interested to register will be helped to register. She has affirmed how valuable and precious your indelible ink is in this democratic process. And she said, be very careful in voting for your candidates. Don't be misled by pretty faces and good looks. Be very vigilant in checking backgrounds and track records of candidates. Be very discerning. Both of them said this. Be very discerning and vote with your conscience. It is important to register and be counted. We all know that. We all know that more today. For democracy to work well, we must vote for the right people in government who can speak for us and not for themselves and their interests only. And so when you vote, vote wisely. Do ask yourself, will this candidate really represent my hopes and aspirations? In hindsight, voting is also beneficial psychologically. So to American Psychological Association, APA, it says, voting builds one's self-concept. So it's an expression of one's self-concept. Gives you more, it builds your self-esteem. People who vote, they say, tend to be highly altruistic. You tend to aim for what is good and just. And people who don't vote tend to be much more self-interested. So maybe for those who are still thinking of registering or not, maybe think of this, the psychological benefit of registering and voting. But more than fulfilling one's civic duty as Filipinos, or making sure that your interests or ideals are heard for, or psychologically benefiting the process, from the process. As Ateneans, we take part in the electoral process. For this one, this is one of the venues where we can express our faith that does justice. So not to do so is tantamount to denial of your Ateneo-ness or pagiging Atenista. Having a faith that does justice speaks of that strong commitment to transform lives and strengthen democratic institutions through a leadership that is guided by the Ignatian principles that we hold dearly. The principle of justice, democracy, decency, meritocracy, honesty, ingenuity, heroism, generosity, selfless service, and love. Today's talk is subtitled, A Voter's Choice is a Nation's Voice. True enough, the most important office in government is that of the private citizens. Ours, yours. As what Sir Jason and Ma'am Alice have said, let us not put into waste our right to vote, your right to be heard, your right that our EDSA and other revolutionary forefathers fought, bled, and died for. And if you become leaders in your own local communities in the future someday, we, your dear speakers, formators, faculty, and staff here in the Ateneo, wish and hope that you will walk your talk and talk your walk and serve your constituents, your people, with a faith that does justice. Thank you so much. Xie.
Thank you, Sir H. Pretty sure we have learned so much today. With our two guest speakers, surely all of us had that, ganun pala moment. So thank you very much. And I know we know that the knowledge you both shared with us today will be the start of us youths becoming agents of changes in society.